Thank you for being here. As I promised at the protest, some of the people who requested comments from me, I said I will deal extensively and take all the questions here at the press conference. So thank you for coming over here and acceding to that request of mine. Today is an eventful day for Guyana, an important day too. And if you were to assess the day from the point of view of democracy, constitutional rule, we would see that we've had some progress, but also some setbacks. So it's a day of mixed events, some progressive and some that have set our country back. And I want to take you through our perspective on those events and how we see things moving forward. But before I do so, a minute ago, just before I walked in here, I looked at the comments given by our caretaker president, Granger, when he exited the GMSA activity. The media asked him about elections, and he had a couple of things to say that must be very worrisome to all of Guyana from the perspective of our future. And please look at this. I am worried that the president somehow has lost it all, that he is stripped out totally, or he doesn't remember what he says 5 seconds prior to his utterances. So he said, I have received a letter from the chairperson of GCOM saying that will be ready for elections by a particular date, and my cabinet will meet shortly, the legal cabinet will meet shortly to discuss this matter. And then immediately thereafter, he says, but I can't really set the date because I have to await GCOM telling me when they'll be ready. And he just said a couple seconds prior to that, he's received a letter from GCOM telling him that they'll be ready by a particular time. And this is, it bothers me a lot. It bothers me a lot, and it should be very worrying for the whole country, because a president who lives in that world, he may very well think he is doing the right thing, although everyone in the country who is sane would know otherwise. And this has been a pattern to all of his speeches. Every speech he has made, he said, I've been in full compliance with the Constitution, when every single Guyanese PPP supporters as well as APNU supporters know that he has been in breach of the Constitution. He has been in breach of the ruling of the court. And he continues to say this. And I think he said it so often that he actually believes this. He just repeated it again. And then he goes off to talk about, oh, I've met with the leader of the opposition several times, and and we made a decision to put a chairperson in place, and look how much I've done. And he forgets that he has a constitutional duty, and that he has to abide by Article 106 of the Constitution. So for him, the Constitution doesn't exist, the Constitution of Guyana. And you can't trust a president who cannot comply with the Constitution. This is a shameful thing for any person, much less the president of Guyana. And I wonder how some of the hardcore supporters that he has feel about this. How can they trust him even if he doesn't respect the Constitution? So for them, the constitutionally imposed timeline doesn't mean anything. I know we'll have elections when we want to. Forget the Constitution, forget everyone else. And this corrupt cabal has inflicted agony and pain and suffering on the people of this country, as outlined in the statement from the international community today, without any regard for their well-being. So I just wanted to say that because people have to understand his mindset and the mindset of this government. They're in a siege mentality now. They know that they're on their way out, so they'll hang on at any cost. So the excuse has been removed from the caretaker president now. He consistently made the excuse that I have to be told by GCOM when they're ready. And then he sends his people over to GCOM to thwart any plan to prepare them for the country for elections. And they have succeeded since December 21st last year to do that, to sabotage every effort to prepare for elections. The 3 commissioners get their instructions from Congress Place, and there are several people in the Secretariat who've been working with them to do that, to sabotage the preparation for elections. And so I sympathize with the chair of GCOM, who has to deal with 3 commissioners whose every effort at every single meeting is to raise extraneous issues, ID card preparations, although they are not on a critical path, merger of data, although that's not necessary, and then the Secretariat issuing press release that seemed to be written in Congress Place, and some of the key officials absenting themselves from meeting, falling sick conveniently, all in an effort to delay preparations for elections so that the caretaker president can continue to have an excuse that it's not me, it's across there, I'm waiting on them. Well, today, the excuse has been taken away. GCOM has written, the chair has written to the president saying they'd be ready by from what we heard, by end February. Note, on this matter, no press release has come out from GCOM as yet. On every little issue, even before the meeting ends, sometimes they have a press release being issued. And half of the time, or more often than not, it is a press release that is either erroneous in its content or reflects the views of the opposition, the government commissioners or Congress Place. But we have not seen an official press release from GCOM on this matter as yet. So I'm telling you what I heard from one of the opposition commissioners, when he said that the letter was written to the president and end February has been identified. So we're extremely disappointed with the date, but we are happy that the excuse has been taken away from the caretaker president. So he no longer can blame GCOM for his unconstitutional acts of staying in office illegally. And so we were surprised that the chairperson, having told both sides that she's working towards elections by the end of the year, when we met her, That's what she said to me and my team. And when the APNU commissioners met with her, she said the same thing to them. Then to spring this surprise on us about February next year being ready for elections. And what bothers me most is that APNU and Congress Place seem to have got their way here. I know that Congress Place has been, from our intelligence, in discussions that they want the elections after Mashramani. Obviously, you know what? They're going to spend another 80 million on bringing in an artiste to give out free tickets. They spent $82 million on the Buju Banton show. I told you about 40 million for tickets, but it was actually $82 million that they spent on one show, and to buy tickets and to do other things, and half of the money probably went into the pockets of a few people. So obviously that's what they were planning all along. And then they got the commissioners to go and present a proposal that will end up in February, March of next year, as they had been doing. And so they succeeded. We have a timeline which shows that elections could be held by the mid-December, by the 16th of December would have been held. But the commissioners refused to give this because they had 4 times before submitted proposals. 4 times prior to this one. And at the last moment, the chair said, can you bring a proposal now? That's not their job. What have they been doing for 6 weeks now? They should have been preparing a timeline. But the Secretariat has been thwarting the preparation of the timeline. So at the last moment, they were asked for this, and had they submitted this, even the decision for February would not have been made today, because APNU would have asked the commissioners, oh, we need 2 weeks to study the PPP's proposal. Another delaying tactic. But the timeline, you can hold elections long before the end of the year. Nevertheless, the chair has written to Granger, and February is the day. So we're extremely disappointed with that. There are several things that have emerged out of this that causes us in the PPP to, you can listen to your stuff while I drink some coffee. Give me a break too. Sorted it out? All right. So there are several things that causes us to be worried and more vigilant, and therefore more vigilant, because we know that APNU is aware that they're on a pathway to losing the elections, and therefore, given their history and all that we've heard about them, they will take every step to create confusion or to attempt to rig the elections. And so, to my surprise, I'm hearing now that a Miss Marshall is in charge of, she's the acting voter registration manager in the Secretariat. And I wouldn't be surprised when you hear about extended timelines or issues with voters registration, because you know our history with Melanie Marshall. She was the RO for Region 4 in the last elections. And when we submitted a request for a recount in, I think, 20-something boxes, they said to us, it's too early, wait until the results had been declared at the regional level and then submit your request. So we had up to noon of the following day to put in a request for a recount, and which is a statutory period. Charles Ramson and some others took that request in. The same Marshall, who was the RO for Region 4, locked up her office and disappeared. We couldn't even get our request for a recount in. And so today we hear that she's in charge, And up to Tuesday last, they had only scanned 129,000 of the 370,000 into the database. That is the 370,000 people and people that they claim they registered, that we believe is padded. I wouldn't put anything past her. We are aware that Lowenfield in June of this year got 200 acres of land from the government. And I'm saying this, and we are aware of what's going on. There are individuals in that secretariat that we don't trust, and we're going to be making this case. We've already spoken to the international community, because having seen their performance in the last several months about how their timelines have all been extended and how they match up new and how they disappear, we don't believe they will fully support the chairperson or give her proper advice. In fact, that is a big concern of ours. So we will be addressing this issue because we are aware of it. And so they don't think that they will poke us in the eyes. We will be addressing this matter about the Secretariat. We've already briefed the international community on this matter, about the Secretariat itself seeking to undermine the elections and about these issues. Now, what was surprising is that the chair keeps mentioning about the data being used, the data from the house-to-house registration, because somehow the Chief Justice said that house-to-house verification is not illegal, and therefore the data collected should be used. Now that's a big leap of faith. Nowhere in the Chief Justice's ruling did it say that they have to use the data. And secondly, I said this at the commission with the chair there, that the purpose for which GCOM started the house-to-house exercise, which is to replace the NRR, was deemed illegal and unconstitutional by the Chief Justice. There is no disputing that. So if you start the house-to-house in that way, then you will you have the data that you gather would be either suspect or unnecessary, duplicating of the names on the NRR, because you can't remove names on NRR. So we will, I think, that having said that there would be some attempt to merge the data, the chairperson made accommodation for that in the timeline when it's totally unnecessary and it was intended to delay the activity. But we will ensure, because I've heard from the commissioners there from the other side, that somehow they are hoping that by merging these two databases, they can create a list that will have duplicate names and have unverified names being added to the list that came out of this unsupervised house-to-house registration. So we will be watching out for that. Don't think they'll poke us in the eyes on that too. We'll be watching out because we're wise to their game already. But the chair needs to, having already caved into their demand to use this unverified data, which is wholly unnecessary, will not improve the list, or can, in fact, it can contaminate the list. But caving into this demand, we're going to watch how the data is used, and it will not be used in a manner that will contaminate the voters list. So those are two things that are critical for us, that we will watch the preparation process, we'll observe everything. We'll start preparing for claims and objection. We hope that starts immediately. I gather there's a decision to start claims and objection, but that can start in 2 days. I heard the staff of the Secretariat, the senior one, saying it will need 2 weeks. They can extract the PLE from the NRR within a matter of 1 day. They can do it in 1 day, but they want 2 weeks to do that. So we'll be watching that too. And in the claims and objection, we'll ensure that people are ready. The good thing about this timeline though, the little extended timeline, so all is not lost, is that more international observers will come. And they will get here early to look at the quality of the voters list, polling day logistics, as well as election day activities. So you're not going to have people only coming in on election day. So they can verify a lot of these, the databases, etc. That's a good thing from it, coming out of this, because more time to go through and scrutinize carefully all of these issues, and that they also, local observers may have enough time to prepare for the election. So, whilst we're disappointed with the date, we believe that elections should have been held before the end of the year. We are going to work to ensure that when they are held, hopefully at the end of February, unless this caretaker president drags it out with, and he will face consequences for that. He'll face consequences for that unless he does that. But 2 months more will give them 2 months more to continue stealing and raping the treasury. That's what will happen, and to illegally squat in office and enjoy the perks. That is what it will do. But we will use the 2 months more to educate Guyanese of every race and every political persuasion about the transgressions of this government and the lack of respect for the Constitution. We'll use those 2 months well to ensure that you have a list, not because Granger said, he says, I want credible elections, I want a credible list. You can't believe anything. Somebody said to me, we need a credible president, not a credible list or a credible election. We need a credible president, because nobody believes this guy when he says the same thing over and over again. And we're going to have a credible president when elections come. We're going to have a credible president. So we're a bit disappointed, but we're patient too. We're patient because we know what the alternative can do to this country. And that brings me to the type of protest. Now, they know that we are not going to go down the street and allow ordinary citizens to be disrupted from their livelihood by beating them up, burning their buildings or their businessmen buildings or places where people work so they lose their jobs, stopping them from going about their daily activities, because we want to be respectful of the rights of the people of Guyana. They're not transgressing the Constitution. Granger is. And that is why we've decided we're never going to get into a violent protest that will harm innocent people and ordinary Guyanese. We want them to be able to go on. But we will target the person who is acting illegally. And so Granger, wherever he shows up, wherever he goes, he is going to be met with protests that will point out and disruptions that will say to him, we're not going to be violent, but we're not going to tolerate a dictatorship in this country. We're not going to tolerate it. And all of the excuses and the etc. will not work. You have to comply with the Constitution of our country. So wherever he shows up, even the caretaker rubber stamp will not get so much attention now, because Granger will get all the attention from us, because he's the one who has to make the decisions. He will get all the love from the PVP side. So today, today's protest, I noticed that, first of all, let me say that we made it clear that there'll be no violence, and the police is not the persons we are protesting against. It's Granger. So the police have to do their work, and we're respectful of that, but they must also be respectful of the rights of the people of this country to peacefully protest. And if they violate that balance, then they will get on our wrong side. But there are constitutional rights we have, and they must not be a party to illegality to deny people of this country their rights. And right to peaceful protest is one of those rights. They would see the difference when with the APNU protests, how they treated police or the harassment and versus ours. And so we will target Granger. So Granger sees, he said, he hoped that the intellectual authors of the protests could stop what they started. So, first of all, I think he meant it as a threat. But we're not worried about your threats, Granger. Let me make that clear. We're not worried about an illegal caretaker president who's squatting in office. So I don't give a damn about your threat. But he doesn't need to look far for the intellectual authors. It's the People's Progressive Party. We don't have hidden intellectual authors of the protest. It's the People's Progressive Party that's out there leading the protest. There's no big hit man in the back room hiding and, saying, oh, you go on to the front, etc. It's the people of Guyana protesting your illegality. And they will stop when you comply with the Constitution and when elections are named and held. I think what Granger is confusing when he speaks about what he confuses is what happened in their tenure. So he could tell me, why do you think he never wants to or never wanted to hold a commission of inquiry into what took place in the period, the crime spree when we had, where people were killed in Bartica and Agricola, and when with their support, they were the intellectual authors of the criminals who took over the community of Buxton and transformed a peaceful village, a village that's been one of our most progressive villages in this country throughout its history, from the time when the slaves bought that village. And with proud people in that village, a lot of those intellectuals had to run out the village, including UC Guyana, had to leave because of the criminality supported by the intellectual authors at Congress Place, and how many people were harmed there. That's the kind of intellectual authors that he should be worried about. But he thinks that we have a hidden agenda. We don't have a hidden agenda. We have an open agenda, which is to get constitutional compliance. And he said he survived hooliganism on the outside. He hasn't seen hooliganism. But hooliganism is every day what we witness at Congress Place, including when they have their elections, when they were beating up people, including in Congress Place when he was elected at the Congress that they had. So what Granger did, though, today, he sent a decoy, his convoy of about 20 vehicles came up as the decoy, and he went through some back door. He should keep going through back doors. He must keep going through back doors and kitchens, because he needs to understand this is not about PPP or PNC. This is about the Constitution of Ghana. Should have walked through there proudly as a president, and we would have accorded him respect as president had he been complying with our Constitution. We would have accorded him with all the respect. He has lost that. So this is our approach now. We will continue being vigilant. The date has been given to Granger. He now needs to call elections immediately. We will watch what's going on at GCOM with eagle's eyes. We will ensure that they do nothing that could affect the preparation for elections there. And we will continue to prepare for elections from the PPP side by ensuring people get registered when the claims and objections come about. I want to urge everyone to get registered in that period, because that will be a legal and a constitutional process. And that's when you go and get registered. 2, we'll continue to take our message of hope for all of Guyana in the months ahead. A message filled with policies about the future, a message filled with policies to protect the rights of Guyanese, to ensure that they are prosperous. That will be what we'll be doing in the next few months, whilst we remain vigilant about what's going on. You should just go through Chronicle's headlines to see how much divorce from reality Granger is. You know, he says things like he's uncomfortable leading a caretaker government. Then he says something here, I'm quoting, the GCOM has exclusive authority in determining its readiness, and I've publicly announced that as soon as I hear from the Commission that it is ready, it has the resources and staff, ballot papers are printed, and all the requirements are complied with under law, I will then consider making an announcement as soon as possible afterwards. So he says, not just write me and tell me. You have to print the ballot paper. Ballot papers are printed a couple days before the elections, after nomination day. And he wants to know that the ballot papers are printed already before he considers naming a date. This is a man who lives in a different world. And he says real clean list. He wants clean list, but his people goes over there to try to contaminate the list. That is their sole purpose. And he says he's establishing benchmarks before polls. So he says on one hand, GCOM is independent, and then he's establishing benchmark for GCOMs. This is a person who is not a leader, who is just existing in the office, who's enjoying the perks of the office. Not a single day does he speak about improving the lives of our people, except get some Photoshop ads to show he's shaking hands around the country. Doesn't talk about jobs. And headlines like these. Double oil strike and Granger's face next to it. You know, it's a subliminal message. Granger is responsible for the double oil strike. It should be double betrayal of the Guyanese people. That should be the headline. Because every time Tullow finds more oil, we're in a worse position, because this president, he directed Trotman. That is what Trotman said. Trotman said, I was directed to sign the Tullow contract. And only one person can direct him. A contract that has 0 royalty, because it's 1% recoverable royalty in the contract. That has all the perks. He should be, this would be shameful. This is a man that they try to associate with the double oil strike, that says he hasn't read the contracts as yet. What kind of president doesn't do that? This, you know, I've been president for 12 and a half years. Before anything is even signed, you read it. You set up a committee to do the negotiations. They come back to you with a negotiating brief. It's an iterative process. This guy has not read the contract as yet. And he double oil strike and Granger's picture. Subliminal. He's responsible for it. And, oh, they're going to PPP wants to steal the oil money. That's why we want to win the election. They tried to steal the first set of oil money, 18 million, before we even started producing oil. They canceled the Secretariat, amended, in fact, shut down the Secretariat of the Integrity Commission. In 5 years, I'm not even sure Granger has submitted any statements to the Integrity Commission. We've done it all along. 3 years gap in the Integrity Commission records for most of his ministers because they shut it down. And he talks about who's stealing oil money. This is the charade we live every day. And in the meantime, the last press conference, I spoke about these outreaches. So even now, they're talking about, oh, tomorrow they're going on an outreach. And they'll be spending, they're going on outreaches, they've spent over $2 billion, as I said before, on these outreaches, and half of it is stolen. That is what's going on. So I was extremely pleased because they keep saying to people, oh, the United States, they're activists on the ground. The United States of America supports them and doesn't want the early elections, etc. That's their propaganda on the ground. And so I was extremely pleased to read the statement. Is there for everyone, the joint statement by the United States of America, the United Kingdom, the European Union, which says, I'm not going to read the whole statement. However, we deeply regret that by surpassing September 18, the government is currently in breach of the Constitution. The government has breached the Constitution of Guyana. And this is following its failure to adhere to the decisions of the Caribbean Court of Justice on 18th of June and its subsequent orders. So the international community has said that this government is in breach of the Constitution. Now, Granger says, when they asked him about that, he said, he just, repeated the whole thing. I'm waiting for the chairman of GCOM to tell me what to do, as I said. And read what else it says. The situation comes at a great cost to the people of Guyana. This is what the joint statement says. The prevailing political uncertainty undermines Guyanese institutions, compromises economic opportunities, and delays development across all areas, including infrastructure, education, health, and social services. It also hinders our ability to support Guyana's development needs. This is a statement from the United States of America, from the UK and the European Union, issued today, saying that this government is in breach of the Constitution. And tomorrow you will see the ministers going about, oh, we have full powers, the cabinet will meet, the arrogance of them, including Patterson. We have a peaceful protest. He wanted to show how powerful he is. So he walked up through the protesters. Had it been, just imagine a minister of the government under the PPP walking through a protest in the afternoon. What would have happened? But he is lucky that the PPP approaches matters differently. He's lucky. But this big hustler minister that we have with impunity, because until now, the guy goes around and holds his head up high, and he collected money from the Chinese company and would not account for it. He's been in breach of all sorts of acts, and he's been involved in a ton of corrupt activities. The Public Procurement Commission caught him doing that, an independent body. And he walks with his head held high and with impunity. We're here. Forget the Constitution, forget the ordinary people in Guyana. You try to go and talk to him. The arrogance, or try to, an ordinary person, to get something out of this government. By the way, they're buying a lot of stuff, as I said before, all the material to hand out now. Almost everything they're handing out. Every time they hand you something, I want to say to the people of Guyana, don't refuse anything. My thing is don't refuse. They bring nice things, give out all the gifts and stuff like that. Take it all. It's taxpayers' money. It's not theirs. Take whatever they hand out, because they are already stolen half of the money in the procuring that stuff. So, but let me make it clear to the public officials. I hope they read about not only the statement from the international community, but our statements, and that every public official who is complicit with them in all these illegal expenditure, etc., will face the consequences. Will face the consequences. So these are just some of the things I wanted to talk about. I noticed this Cummings Berg Accord. They keep talking about it, and as I said before, people, they'll be happy to have the elections delayed so they can shore up the government. That's all they're talking about. You heard Ramjatan overseas when he was met with protests. He was rambling all over the place that they caught this big corruption, Nandalal for a couple of textbooks and Irfan Ali. Pure nonsense. Pathetic, repeating the same old accusations that have been discredited from the 2014-2015 campaign, having nothing new to offer people. So please pay attention to this Cummings-Berg Accord negotiation. They're splitting up ministerial position again between PNC and AFC, fighting over who will have what in the next government. Well, none of them, well, I shouldn't say that. They wouldn't have anything to share. We may have to share with them. We may have to share with them. But this big fight over who will get what and who will get their hands on more resources. Jordan should be hiding now by now, until he tells us how his son and the others got a vehicle for less than $300,000. I think it's $250,000 from GRA, buy an entire vehicle for that without any tender. He shouldn't say another word about corruption or anything else, and how it happened, and to give us the list of all of the people who got similar concessions. Not only his son, but another relative of his too got these vehicles. They should not even venture a word to talk about accountability when they come up. They've lost any credibility to do so. Cathy Hughes, what about her? I saw her saying we have to wait liberalization into the future. Imagine that was one of the biggest planks. We were moving on the verge of liberalizing telecommunication so that you can bring in more bandwidth, you can lower the cost, you can expand it, etc. Now she's saying that has to wait forever. No doubt they're compromised. And also they're busy implementing and through corruption. I have to speak to the international organizations that are the pass-through for the Norwegian fund, the 17 million US that was for the upgrading of telecommunication, internet, etc. in the Amerindian communities. They're stealing a lot of money from that too. When they go to the Amerindian communities and open up an internet facility now, it's from this grant that we left, 17 million that we earned from Norway, but they're stealing a lot of it. And then they got this Marvin Williams, today's paper, I think, saying we threatened to revoke Amerindian land title. This guy, I think it's a disease that has spread throughout his cabinet. He's just like Granger. I think they've gone mad. PPP revoking, we moved land titling from 6% of Guyana to 14% of Guyana for indigenous people. We had a plan in place with 10.2 million left to continue the activity. They have not done a single one. And he gets chronicled, the rag there, to continue making, in Chronicle, making that excuse. So it's a ton of this. You'll hear more about it. And the cover-up for ALS, that's a huge cover-up there. And I wouldn't put it past Felix and Paul Slow in the center of that cover-up. And it has to do with who will do what on election night. We are aware of it. It's a cover-up on the ALS matter. And so And you notice on the oil and gas sector, now Lincoln Lewis says, oh, my contract, I know the people are earning a small sum of money. I saw that. It's atrocious that a person has to work 28 days, 12-hour shift at sea, and then 28 days rest, and earn $72,000 Guyana dollars gross. That's the gross earning. A cleaner, sometimes gardeners make more than that. And this is 12-hour shift abroad. And the thing is that the foreigners on those same rigs earn 20,000 US dollars a month, 15,000 US dollars a month. And I heard there's a racket now with some of these foreign companies. They bring in people and rotate them out before the 180 days they pass. So then they don't have to register for tin and tax payments here. So they rotate them out before that happens. This is what I hear a lot of the companies are doing. So then they wouldn't have a tax obligation here when they're required to pay taxes. A lot of this wickedness is happening, and this government doesn't do anything about it. Just tours the ships, they take photo ops, put Granger picture next to the oil find, get the Verway to announce that the oil find will be coming soon, and that's insider trading. And I'm sure that it's designed Tolush and should be investigated too for that. It's all that is happening now. It just irks me. It's getting too overbearing that Guyanese are treated this day. And now Lincoln Lewis, suddenly he wants better labor standards there. So he makes a token suggestion. But you know, now he says government and PPP must ensure this. When it's the good things, it's all government. When it's bad things, he drags the PPP in. We must ensure this. You have a useless government. He should be calling on this government to ensure it, to protect our people. This is what's going on. Whilst they're busy stealing, accumulating for themselves, another minister bought a house this is his fourth house now that he bought in Campbellville. There's another minister, I don't want to say much about this, but we know, and we may have to go to the FIU because we believe he's involved in money laundering. He has set up an account abroad, we know which bank, and over $5 million have passed through the US dollars through that account in the last 3 years. And this is what's happening every single day, and Granger runs the corrupt government. He presides over this corrupt cabal whilst the country suffers, and then he makes these silly statements. So I'd end here. Thanks.
Mr. Jagdeo, if you are so adamant that the elections should have been held before the year is out, why not advocate for the submission of that work plan that you referred to?
Because precisely what I said. This is an excuse by the chair, pure excuse. 4 submissions have been made. You have 6 weeks to look into all of this matter, timelines, etc. On the day, the 18th, you're going to ask for a proposal from the 2 sides. You should have asked for that proposal from the beginning. And then we know what to deploy. Our side has submitted several times proposals. We have it here. It ends on the 16th. But we were not going to be party to another attempt to delay. Had we submitted this, you wouldn't have even had a decision in February now. They're writing Granger that it will be in February. The commissioners in APNU will say we need 2 weeks to study PPP's proposal. And then we'll get back there and it will be another round of discussion. So the commissioners, and I think rightfully so, did not submit. The chair has an obligation not to take the APNU proposal or the Secretariat, but to interrogate the timelines.
And to clarify, that work plan excludes the merger.
This one, yes, excludes the merger because it starts with extracting the PLE. It starts with extracting the PLE. Now, that's what they were opposed to.
Okay, so the president, he's going to be met by protests wherever he goes until what, election day?
Well, first of all, let's revise our position until he names the election date. And that's the first instance. I'm moving in stages. You see, this here is knowing the nature of APNU. You have to almost, as I said before, plan a long game with them. And the long game is they've been cornered. They've had a long time to drift a lot of rope. They're getting cornered now because the crunch is coming. They're running out of excuses. And now, thankfully, the international community has definitively weighed in now by saying they're in breach of the Constitution, which they did not say before. So now that is clear. That's how the international community sees the government now. So we are, in the first instance, we will keep this up until he names the date. And we hope the date is in February itself. It would succeed. As I said before, they'll share a lot of tickets to matrimony and stuff. I hope we collect some too, but wouldn't change the outcome.
Being off again, Senator. Sir, a few questions. What sort of faith would the PPP have in the GCOM chair now at a point when not so long ago she told you and she assured you in a meeting that she is working towards election
before the end of the year?
And then
that is why it was so shocking. And she said that to the other side too. In fact, when Valda Lawrence and the others exited, they were quoted as saying that the chairperson reiterated his position that I'm working to elections before the end of the year. And then out of the blues, we see this thing that they're advising now February. And this is coincidental with the proposal submitted by Corbyn, that there are great coincidence between that date and the proposal.
I understand that, but does that weaken the faith that the PPP has in the chair?
As I said before, I think she's under tremendous pressure. I have great faith in the fairness and the impartiality of the chair of GCOM. And I don't think that she will do anything to rig the elections, but she's surrounded by a secretariat, and she has to rely on a secretariat that is unreliable at best. At best, unreliable. But I think they're more sinister than just being unreliable. They're deliberately feeding her and raising concerns that are extraneous and feeding extended timelines. And it's the same thing. She then has a commission where 3 of the members, they don't want any timeline. That their entire purpose so far has been to frustrate the process. So I sympathize with that. But while sympathizing with that, the situation, and having faith in her impartiality, I expected that she would have remained faithful to what she said to the 2 parties.
Following the statement released by the American, Britain, and the EU, the president said that these foreign sources or powers should allow Ghana to solve their problems on their own. So that coupled with the fact that at the luncheon, he adopted a very nonchalant pose. How effective are some of the measures that the PPP will be taking? How effective would that be?
Yeah, I know. That's a brilliant kind of description of him. Nonchalant. And I must say generous. I must say generous description, because I'm trying to find out if he doesn't understand how ridiculous he sounds when he says these things over and over again. And that's one about, I met and I'm waiting on readiness and I'm in full compliance, and you have a cabinet that is illegally meeting and you're in full compliance. It's ridiculous. It's laughable. People, when he says these things, it turns some people get angry, some laugh at it. For me, it's all pity. I pity him for being in that state. So that's one. But suddenly, he runs off. They're farming out all the intellectual work. I see now they're trying to farm out the intellectual work of creating a national competitiveness strategy to somebody working, paid for by the oil companies. Everything. Anytime you ask him, or I'm waiting on some advice from abroad, etc. But when the advice from abroad or the positions from abroad come not in his favor, and they say, respect the Constitution, you're in breach of the Constitution, he wants us to resolve the issue in Guyana. But when I go to meet with him, there's no movement. The guy just sits there and repeats this thing, the same thing over. Oh, I love this country and all of that, the good things, and I'm waiting on GCOM. A president has responsibility for the country, for the compliance with the Constitution, for the conduct of elections, ensuring that the constitutional bodies act in a timeline. Had he said, I am going to obey the Constitution, you get the country ready for elections by September 18th, say after the CCJ results. And if you can't, you come back to me and tell me why now, or what's the nearest date possible from thereafter, by September 18th. And then say to the 3 commissioners that go across there, you're going over there to support that agenda. By now, we would have had elections, long time back. But he doesn't want to do that. So he uses this as an excuse, GCOM's readiness. No, when the history of Guyana is written, you will see all the missed opportunities. This is an era where we have a president who acts like the queen, who believes that he is ceremonial. We have an executive president in this country who chairs a cabinet, who has responsibilities for programs, policies, plans, who has to read documents, who has to give directions, who needs to know about all the plans and about in his cabinet, who can talk about what they're doing. Look, we have our manifesto now, and we can tell you, if you ask us about any area now, you ask me any single sector, I can tell you the history, what's wrong with it now, and what we're going to do to fix it. He never discusses this sort of thing. Don't even read this. His ministers don't read. Doesn't demand anything of them. That is the kind of president we have, almost ceremonial. All he wants to do is every napkin on a table must be green. It can't be red. And, if he goes to a function and sees red napkins on the table, or the people get into trouble. That kind of, I don't want to use a bad word, nonsense, doesn't change a country. Or he has to have a fleet of vehicles following him. This sort of ceremonial kind of love for ceremonies and spending a ton of money there, that's not the nature of the country we have. We have an executive president. He's failed miserably. And people may like him, he's a nice old man and all of that stuff, and that's fine. But as a president, I'm talking about, not as an individual. As an individual, I get along well with him too. And he's Guyanese, and as Guyanese, we're supposed to get along well, etc. But that's as an individual. I'm not talking about him as an individual. I'm talking about in the discharge of his responsibilities. You have the fate of a country and the lives of so many people depending on you, and you act this way. That is what we have today.
Mr. Jagdeo, Guyanese Secretariat.
The PPP has found themselves in what I'm calling a strenuous situation. Don't you think it's the ideal time for the PPP's presidential candidate to come forward and show his ability to deal with these kind of things?
So I'm glad what you asked me here, because I saw he gave about 20 comments, and I'm sure you must have taken a comment. Well, that's it. He was in the center of things there. Me, I'm more backseat, like I'm here now. He was in the center, leading the charge out there this morning. So that is leadership from the front. That is giving a comment to you and not hiding from the media. He's giving comments to about 15 media houses directly there, unscripted. He didn't have to have a ceremony and bang a gong before you get a press conference, you know, like this ceremonial president that we have. You had access to him. He goes on the ground, people have access to him. That's what the kind of president we want. Not just press conferences, but every day being able to talk on 2-3 issues. Last week he spoke about education sector. He said, 1, it's access. We're improving access at every level. 2, we want to improve quality across all levels. 3, we want to prepare people for the job market at the technical and the tertiary level. And 4, we want to make education more affordable to all. These are the 4 objectives of the PPP's policies. Then he outlines in each of the areas how we will do this, from nutrition programs for our children, restoration of the grant, more facilities, better equipped facilities, more free university education, a pathway for those students who already have student loans and didn't pay, a proposal that will come out shortly, how they can also get their loans written off. All of these things he outlined. That is what he is doing. Prior to that, he outlined what we're going to do in the mining sector. We is talking policy. That's what we want from a candidate, and access. So compare to Granger. If you ask Granger about education, free education for all, we love the children, we'll do, we'd implement all the policies necessary to ensure that happens. You'd not get into specifics. We'll never get into specifics. He has vague understanding of this. I know all the children love me, and the children looking at him and shaking their hands and saying, when we get him back the $10,000 thing.
Secondly,
Yes, you can.
since you've invited delving into the manifesto, 50,000 jobs, how's that going to play out?
We outlined the sectors, you see, creating jobs. So the policies we're putting in place and the sectors that we're going to do it in as part of the manifesto here. So this will, by next week you should have a copy of this. This is a popular version. So you will see in great detail what are the policies we're going to put in place that will do this. Okay? Because we're not just saying, 50,000 jobs just like that. We're outlining all the policy measures we will put in place, both in the public service as well as in the private sector, to create these jobs.
I'll follow up to Frederick's question earlier. As we move closer to election, can we see
Yes.
Mr. Ali?
He will be doing more
that?
of this, yes.
Or will he come with
Yes, he will do his own thing as we get closer to the elections. Because this also has to, you'd have to brief people about, different issues. The big fight has been an election date so far. That has been our big battle.
I'm just scrolling the web and seeing attacks by sympathizers of the PPP on the chairperson.
No.
I want to reiterate
There
your
should be
confidence.
no disparaging statement made about the chairperson. I've outlined our disappointment in the time, but I've also made it clear how we view her. That I have great faith in her impartiality, and I have great faith that she will not tolerate any rigging of the elections, and that is crucial to us. I can't say the same thing about the man who was removed, Patterson. I couldn't say the same thing about him. I can say that about her. And so whilst we may not agree with her on these issues, that is critical for her. And I know the environment she's working in, and what I said today is really a call for her to be cautious about those people too. Because she's getting advice from, who's supposed to advise her from internal. that they may not be working in the best interest of the organization or free and fair elections, and that she must be more guarded too. So that should not happen. That should stop if that has happened. Thank you.